As I sit here, reflecting on the events that have unfolded, I can't help but feel a sense of disbelief and sorrow. My name is Detective Sarah Thompson, and I've been assigned to what might be the most perplexing and emotionally charged case of my career. It all began on a crisp autumn morning in Albany, New York, when the call came in about 2 bodies discovered in a motel room on the outskirts of town. Little did I know that this case would not only challenge my investigative skills but also shake the very foundation of our community. The victims were identified as Daniel Roberts, a highly respected prosecutor known for his relentless pursuit of white-collar criminals, and his 22-year-old stepdaughter, Jessica. As I arrived at the scene, the air was thick with tension and speculation. The motel, a nondescript establishment tucked away from the main roads, was now the center of attention, its parking lot filled with police vehicles and curious onlookers. I've seen my fair share of crime scenes, but there was something particularly unsettling about this one. The room where Daniel and Jessica were found was unremarkable, a standard motel room with dated furnishings and faded wallpaper. Yet, it held secrets that would soon unravel the carefully constructed image of a prominent family man and his enigmatic stepdaughter. As I began to piece together the events leading up to their deaths, I couldn't help but think about the complexity of human relationships. Daniel had been Jessica's stepfather since she was 10 years old, raising her alongside her mother for over a decade. By all accounts, their relationship had been distant, with Jessica keeping to herself and Daniel immersed in his work. However, recent reports suggested a shift in their dynamic, with the two being seen together more frequently in the weeks leading up to their deaths. The motel staff provided some initial insights. A young clerk, visibly shaken, recounted checking in a couple matching Daniel and Jessica's description late in the evening 2 days prior. He remembered them because they seemed an odd pair, an older man and a young woman, both appearing nervous and avoiding eye contact. They had paid in cash and requested privacy, a common occurrence in a place known for discreet encounters. As I delved deeper into their backgrounds, I discovered layers of complexity that I hadn't anticipated. Daniel Roberts was more than just a successful prosecutor. He was a pillar of the community, known for his charitable work and dedication to justice. His colleagues spoke of him with reverence, describing a man of unwavering principles and a fierce determination to uphold the law. Yet, as I interviewed those closest to him, I sensed an undercurrent of unease, as if there were aspects of Daniel's life that remained hidden from public view. Jessica, on the other hand, was an enigma. Despite being raised in a prominent family, she had managed to maintain a low profile. Her few friends described her as introspective and artistic, with a penchant for solitude. She had recently graduated from college with a degree in psychology, but seemed unsure about her future path. What struck me most was the contrast between her reserved nature and the circumstances of her death, found in a motel room with her stepfather, far from the quiet life she supposedly led. As I continued my investigation, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this case than a simple tragedy. The autopsy reports raised more questions than answers, revealing no signs of struggle or obvious cause of death. Toxicology results were pending, but initial findings suggested the presence of an unknown substance in both victim systems. This revelation opened up a new avenue of inquiry. Were Daniel and Jessica victims of foul play? Or was there a more sinister explanation for their demise? The community's reaction to the news was a mix of shock, disbelief, and morbid fascination. Daniel Roberts had been a public figure, someone many looked up to as a symbol of justice and integrity. The idea that he might have been involved in something scandalous with his stepdaughter was almost too much for some to bear. Rumors began to circulate, each more outlandish than the last. Some speculated about a secret affair, while others whispered about possible blackmail or corruption within the prosecutor's office. As I sifted through the evidence and testimonies, I couldn't help but reflect on the nature of appearances versus reality. How well do we really know the people in our lives, even those closest to us? Daniel Roberts had presented an image of a dedicated public servant and family man, yet here he was, found dead in a motel room with his stepdaughter under suspicious circumstances. It was a stark reminder that even those we hold in the highest regard can harbor dark secrets. The investigation took me down unexpected paths, leading me to uncover a web of connections I never anticipated. I found myself delving into Daniel's past cases, re-examining the criminals he had prosecuted and the enemies he might have made along the way. Could one of them have orchestrated this as an act of revenge? Or was there something more personal at play? Jessica's life, too, proved to be more complex than initially thought. Her seemingly quiet existence masked a troubled past, with hints of mental health struggles and a strained relationship with her mother. I discovered a journal hidden in her apartment, filled with cryptic entries that hinted at a deep-seated anguish and a sense of being trapped in a life she didn't choose. As the days turned into weeks, the case consumed me. I found myself working late into the night, poring over evidence and following leads that often led to dead ends. The pressure from the public and my superiors to solve the case quickly was intense, but I knew that rushing to conclusions would only lead to injustice. This case demanded patience, thoroughness, and an open mind. One breakthrough came in the form of a witness who had been hesitant to come forward initially. A motel employee who wasn't on duty the night of the incident recalled seeing Daniel and Jessica at the motel on a previous occasion, weeks before their deaths. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the case, suggesting that whatever led to their demise had been building for some time. As I pieced together the timeline of events, a picture began to emerge. One of secrets, lies, and a relationship far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The truth, I realized, was likely to be as devastating as it was shocking. But I was determined to uncover it, no matter where it led or who it implicated. The case of Daniel Roberts and Jessica had become more than just another investigation. It had become a journey into the depths of human nature, a stark reminder of the complexities that lie beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives. As I continued to unravel the mystery, I knew that the truth, when finally revealed, would change not only my perspective on this case but on the very nature of justice and human relationships. In the quiet moments between interviews and evidence analysis, I found myself pondering the broader implications of this case. It wasn't just about solving a crime. It was about understanding the human condition, the choices we make, and the consequences that follow. As I moved closer to the truth, I braced myself for what I might discover, knowing that sometimes the most difficult truths are the ones that hit closest to home. As I delve deeper into this perplexing case, I find myself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and startling revelations. The investigation into the deaths of Daniel Roberts and his stepdaughter Jessica has taken a turn that none of us could have anticipated, plunging our quiet community into a maelstrom of speculation and disbelief. Every new piece of evidence seems to raise more questions than it answers, and I can't shake the feeling that we've only scratched the surface of this intricate mystery. The first bombshell dropped when we discovered that Daniel, a man known for his unwavering integrity, had checked into the motel under a false name. This revelation sent shockwaves through the department and the community at large. How could a prosecutor, someone who had built his career on upholding the law, engage in such deceptive behavior? It was a stark reminder that even those we hold in the highest regard can harbor secrets, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about Daniel Roberts. As we dug deeper into Jessica's life, a picture emerged of a young woman grappling with inner turmoil. Friends and family, speaking in hushed tones and with worried glances, painted a portrait of someone struggling against unseen forces. They spoke of changes in her behavior, of withdrawn silences and cryptic comments that hinted at something dark lurking beneath the surface. One friend, her voice trembling with emotion, recounted a conversation where Jessica had alluded to being involved in something dangerous, something she couldn't escape. But when pressed for details, Jessica had clammed up, leaving her friend with nothing but a gnawing sense of unease. The autopsy results hit like a thunderbolt, revealing that both Daniel and Jessica had succumbed to a lethal cocktail of toxic substances. This discovery opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. Was this a tragic suicide pact? Or were more sinister forces at play? The mixture of chemicals was unusual, not something typically seen in cases of recreational drug use or common poisonings. It suggested a level of premeditation and knowledge that sent chills down my spine. Who would have access to such substances? And why would they target Daniel and Jessica? As we grappled with these questions, The media descended upon our town like vultures, their hunger for sensationalism threatening to derail our investigation. Rumors and speculation ran rampant, with local news outlets and gossip rags alike spinning tales of illicit affairs and hidden scandals. They latched onto whispers of tension between Daniel and Jessica in the months leading up to their deaths, twisting innocent interactions into something sordid and unnatural. It sickened me to see their memories tarnished, their lives reduced to tabloid fodder. But I knew that somewhere in this maelstrom of conjecture, there might be a kernel of truth that could lead us to the answers we so desperately sought. Amidst the chaos of the investigation and the media frenzy, a breakthrough came in the form of a partially burned note discovered in the motel room. When I first laid eyes on the charred piece of paper, my heart raced with anticipation. Here, finally, was something concrete, a tangible clue that might shed light on the circumstances surrounding their deaths. But as I carefully unfolded the fragile document, my excitement gave way to frustration. The note was incomplete, its message fragmented and cryptic. What remained legible hinted at a threat, a looming danger that had driven Daniel and Jessica to this desperate act. But who was behind this threat? And what could be so dire that it would drive a respected prosecutor and his stepdaughter to such extremes? As I pored over the note, analyzing every word and trying to fill in the blanks, I couldn't help but feel a sense of kinship with Daniel and Jessica. In those final moments, what must have been going through their minds? Fear, certainly, but perhaps also a grim determination to protect something or someone. The more I learned about this case, the more I realized that nothing was as it seemed on the surface. Every answer we uncovered only led to more questions, like peeling back layers of an onion only to find more layers underneath. The investigation began to take its toll on me, both professionally and personally. I found myself working late into the night, fueled by coffee and a relentless drive to uncover the truth. My colleagues worried about my obsession with the case, but I couldn't let it go. Something about Daniel and Jessica's story had gotten under my skin, and I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I uncovered the truth, no matter how ugly or painful it might be. As we delved deeper into Daniel's professional life, we began to uncover discrepancies that hinted at a darker underbelly to his work as a prosecutor. Financial records showed unexplained deposits, carefully hidden but significant enough to raise red flags. Was Daniel involved in something illegal? Had his pursuit of justice led him down a path of corruption? Or was he being set up by someone with a grudge against him? The possibilities were endless, and each one more disturbing than the last. Jessica's life, too, began to reveal its complexities. We discovered that she had been seeing a therapist in the months leading up to her death, but the therapist was bound by confidentiality and could reveal little about their sessions. However, the mere fact that Jessica had sought help suggested that she was grappling with issues beyond the normal stresses of young adulthood. What secrets had she shared in those sessions? And could they hold the key to understanding the events that led to her untimely death? As the investigation progressed, I found myself becoming emotionally invested in Daniel and Jessica's story. I spent hours poring over their photographs, studying their faces for clues, trying to understand the people behind the headlines. In Daniel's eyes, I saw a man burdened by responsibility and perhaps by secrets he couldn't share. Jessica's smile seemed tinged with sadness, a young woman carrying a weight too heavy for her years. I felt a deep sense of responsibility to uncover the truth, not just for the sake of justice, but to honor their memories and give voice to their silent stories. The partially burned note became my obsession. I spent countless hours analyzing the legible portions, trying to decipher the hidden message. Must protect there coming no other choice. These fragments haunted my dreams, tantalizing clues to a larger mystery that remained just out of reach. Who were they? What did Daniel and Jessica feel they had to protect? And why did they believe they had no other choice but to end their lives in that lonely motel room? As the investigation stretched on, the pressure from above intensified. My superiors were growing impatient, eager for a resolution that would satisfy the public and quell the media frenzy. But I knew that rushing to judgment would be a disservice to Daniel and Jessica, and to the truth we were seeking. This case was unlike anything I had encountered before, a labyrinth of secrets and lies that defied easy answers. In my quieter moments, I found myself reflecting on the nature of truth and justice. How often do we think we know someone, only to discover that we've barely scratched the surface? Daniel Roberts had been a pillar of the community, respected and admired by all who knew him. Yet here we were, uncovering layer after layer of secrets and possible wrongdoing. It was a stark reminder that human nature is complex and often contradictory, capable of both great good and unfathomable darkness. As I pushed forward with the investigation, I knew that the truth, when we finally uncovered it, would likely shake our community to its core. But I was determined to see it through, no matter where it led or who it implicated. Daniel and Jessica deserved justice, and I was committed to uncovering the full story behind their tragic end, no matter the cost. The road ahead would be challenging, fraught with obstacles and unexpected turns, but I was ready to face whatever came my way in pursuit of the truth. As I sit here in my dimly lit office, the weight of this case pressing down on me like a physical force, I can't help but feel we've reached a critical juncture in our investigation. The deaths of Daniel Roberts and his stepdaughter Jessica have consumed my every waking moment, and now, with these new developments, I sense we're on the precipice of uncovering a truth far more complex and sinister than any of us could have imagined. The breakthrough came late one night as I was reviewing the motel security footage for what felt like the 100th time. There, in the grainy black and white images, a shadow caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but as I leaned in closer, my heart began to race. A figure, previously unnoticed, slipped into Daniel and Jessica's room mere hours before their bodies were discovered. This mysterious third person, their face obscured and movements furtive, spent only minutes inside before vanishing into the night. Who was this shadowy figure, and what role did they play in the tragedy that unfolded? The discovery sent shockwaves through our investigation team, opening up a new avenue of inquiry that could potentially blow the case wide open. As we scrambled to identify this new player in our unfolding drama, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. A deep dive into Daniel's phone records revealed a call made just before the incident, a number that didn't belong to any of his known contacts. With a sense of mounting excitement and trepidation, we began the process of tracing the call. What we uncovered sent chills down my spine. The number was linked to a notorious figure in the criminal underworld, someone Daniel should have had no reason to contact. This connection raised a host of new questions. Was Daniel involved in something illegal? Or was he being threatened or blackmailed? The implications were staggering, threatening to upend everything we thought we knew about the respected prosecutor. In the midst of these revelations, I found myself sitting across from Jessica's mother, a woman worn down by grief and confusion. Her eyes, red-rimmed and haunted, met mine as she haltingly confessed that the relationship between Daniel and Jessica had soured in recent months. She spoke of hushed arguments, of tension so thick you could cut it with a knife, but admitted she never knew the cause. As I gently pressed for more details, she broke down, sobbing that she should have done more, should have seen the signs. Her pain was palpable, and I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets this family had been harboring. Just when I thought we couldn't uncover any more shocking revelations, Jessica's diary surfaced. As I pored over its pages, my hands trembling slightly, I felt as though I was intruding on her most private thoughts. But what I found within those pages was far from the typical musings of a young woman. Instead, I discovered a narrative of fear and secrecy, of clandestine meetings, and a nameless threat that loomed over her life. Jessica wrote of feeling watched, of a presence that haunted her every move. Who was this unnamed stalker, and how did they fit into the larger picture of her and Daniel's deaths? Each entry left me with more questions than answers, but I knew that somewhere within these pages lay the key to unraveling this mystery. As the case progressed, I found myself working closely with the new prosecutor assigned to the case, a sharp-minded woman named Claire Simmons. At first, our collaboration was tentative, each of us wary of stepping on the other's toes. But as we delved deeper into the intricacies of the case, a mutual respect began to develop. It was Claire who first voiced the theory that had been nagging at the back of my mind, that Daniel's work as a prosecutor might be directly linked to the events leading to his and Jessica's deaths. The possibility of revenge, of someone from Daniel's past coming back to settle a score, suddenly seemed not just plausible but likely. This new angle opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. We began combing through Daniel's old cases, looking for anyone who might have harbored a grudge strong enough to motivate murder. The list of potential suspects was disturbingly long. White-collar criminals with resources and connections, gang members with a code of vengeance, corrupt officials who might have feared exposure. Each lead we pursued seemed to branch off into a dozen more, creating a web of intrigue that threatened to overwhelm us. As we dug deeper, patterns began to emerge. Several of Daniel's most high-profile cases had involved a shadowy criminal organization that had tentacles reaching into every corner of the city. The more we uncovered, the more it seemed that Daniel had been on the verge of exposing something big, something that certain powerful people would go to any lengths to keep hidden. Had he stumbled upon a conspiracy that cost him and Jessica their lives? The pressure to solve the case was mounting. The media circus showed no signs of abating, with new theories and speculation splashed across the headlines daily. The public demanded answers, and our superiors were growing impatient. But I knew we couldn't rush this. One false move, one hasty conclusion, and we risked not only failing to bring justice for Daniel and Jessica, but potentially putting more lives at risk. As I worked late into the night, poring over evidence and connecting dots, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Small incidents, a car following me home, a strange click on my phone line, began to add up. Was I becoming paranoid, or were the same forces that had silenced Daniel now turning their attention to our investigation? The strain was beginning to take its toll. I found myself jumping at shadows, second-guessing every decision. My colleagues worried about my obsession with the case, but I couldn't let it go. Daniel and Jessica's faces haunted my dreams, their silent pleas for justice driving me forward even when every instinct told me to back off. In a moment of clarity, I realized that we needed to approach this from a new angle. If Daniel had indeed been on the verge of exposing a major criminal conspiracy, then the key to solving his murder might lie not in what we could find, but in what was missing. What evidence had been erased? What leads had been deliberately obscured? We began to look for the gaps in our information, the negative spaces that might hold the truth we sought. As we pursued this new line of inquiry, a pattern began to emerge. Certain files were missing from Daniel's office, specific dates were unaccounted for in his calendar. And most intriguingly, there were gaps in Jessica's social media activity that coincided with some of Daniel's busiest periods at work. Were these coincidences, or signs of a deeper connection between their fates? The breakthrough came in the form of an encrypted file hidden on Daniel's personal laptop. As our tech team worked to crack the encryption, I could feel the tension in the air. Whatever was contained in that file, I knew it would be the key to unlocking this entire mystery. As the decryption process neared completion, I braced myself for what we might discover. Little did I know that the contents of that file would not only blow the case wide open but would shake the very foundations of our city's power structure. With each new revelation, each piece of the puzzle that fell into place, I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. We were close, so close to uncovering the truth. But at what cost? As I stared at the web of connections we'd mapped out on my office wall, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something much bigger and more dangerous than we'd ever anticipated. The deaths of Daniel Roberts and Jessica were just the tip of the iceberg, and what lay beneath threatened to drag us all under. As I stand in the middle of the chaos that has become our investigation room, my mind races to process the flood of information that's poured in over the last 48 hours. The case that began with the tragic deaths of Daniel Roberts and his stepdaughter Jessica has exploded into something far beyond what any of us could have imagined. The walls around me are covered with photos, timelines, and connection webs that look more like the work of a conspiracy theorist than a professional detective. But I know, deep in my gut, that we're on the verge of uncovering a truth that will shake our city to its core. The breakthrough came when we finally managed to decrypt the files on Daniel's personal laptop. As the information spilled across our screens, I felt a chill run down my spine. Daniel hadn't just been working on another white-collar crime case. He had stumbled onto something massive, a criminal network that reached into the highest echelons of our city's power structure. Politicians, judges, business leaders, all implicated in a web of corruption that made my head spin. No wonder Daniel had been receiving threats. He was sitting on a powder keg of information that could bring down an empire. But Daniel, ever the crusader for justice, had ignored the warnings. He believed in the system, believed that he could handle whatever came his way. Oh, how wrong he had been. As I pored over his notes, I could see the mounting evidence, the connections he was making. He was close, so close to exposing it all. And that's when they decided to silence him. The identity of the mysterious third person at the motel hit us like a thunderbolt. Thomas Reeves, a former colleague of Daniel's, now under investigation for corruption. When we brought him in for questioning, I could see the fear in his eyes, the nervous twitches that betrayed his cool exterior. He denied any involvement in the deaths, of course, but his presence at the scene was damning. What was he doing there? Was he trying to warn Daniel, to threaten him, or was he somehow involved in what happened next? As we dug deeper, the case exploded into real-time action. A tip-off led us to a warehouse on the outskirts of town, supposedly a hub for the criminal organization we were investigating. What followed was chaos. A firefight between our officers and armed suspects that left 3 wounded and the warehouse in flames. But from the ashes of that confrontation, we retrieved a treasure trove of evidence, ledgers, computer drives, and most importantly, a list of names that connected Daniel's case to a conspiracy that reached far beyond anything we had imagined. Amidst all this, the mystery of Jessica's involvement deepened. We had finally managed to piece together most of the burned note found in the motel room, and its contents left us reeling. "I have to protect them," Jessica had written. "They don't know what's coming. This is the only way." Who was she trying to protect? And from what? The revelation cast her role in a new light. Was she a victim caught in the crossfire, or did she play a more active role in this deadly game? The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with the capture of the man behind the threats against Daniel. It was a high-stakes operation, with our team working around the clock to track him down. When we finally cornered him in a safe house across state lines, I was there leading the charge. As we burst through the door, I locked eyes with him, and in that moment, I saw a mixture of defiance and resignation. In the interrogation room, he spilled his guts. Yes, he had been hired to silence Daniel. Yes, there was a plan to eliminate both the prosecutor and any potential witnesses. But something had gone wrong. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he insisted, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and confusion. "They were already dead when we got there. Someone beat us to it." As I listened to his confession, my mind raced. If he and his team weren't directly responsible for the deaths, then who was? What had really happened in that motel room? The pieces were all there, but they refused to fit together in a way that made sense. In the days that followed, our investigation kicked into high gear. We were no longer just solving a double homicide. We were unraveling a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of our city. Every lead we pursued, every stone we turned over, revealed new layers of corruption and deceit. The media frenzy reached fever pitch as bits and pieces of our investigation leaked to the press. Headlines screamed about corruption in high places, about a prosecutor who died trying to expose the truth. Public opinion swung wildly, with some hailing Daniel as a hero and others questioning his motives and integrity. Through it all, I couldn't shake the image of Jessica from my mind. Her diary entries, filled with fear and determination, painted a picture of a young woman caught up in something far beyond her control. Had she discovered what Daniel was working on? Was she trying to help him or protect him from the consequences of his investigation? As we delved deeper into the criminal network Daniel had uncovered, the danger to our own investigation became palpable. Strange cars began following me home from work. Anonymous threats were left on my voicemail. One night, I came home to find my apartment ransacked, a clear message that someone was watching and didn't like what we were uncovering. But we couldn't stop now. We were too close to the truth, too invested in bringing justice not just for Daniel and Jessica, but for all the victims of this vast conspiracy. Our team worked around the clock, connecting dots, following leads, and slowly but surely building a case that would stand up in court. The breakthrough came when we managed to turn one of the lower-level members of the criminal organization. His testimony provided the missing links we needed, connecting the threats against Daniel to some of the most powerful figures in our city. It was a house of cards, and we were poised to bring it all tumbling down. As we prepared to make our move, executing search warrants and preparing indictments, I couldn't help but reflect on the cost of this investigation. 2 lives lost, countless others ruined or forever changed. The truth, it seemed, came at a heavy price. In the quiet moments before the storm, I found myself standing in front of the evidence board, staring at the photos of Daniel and Jessica. What would they think of all this? Had their deaths been worth the exposure of this vast conspiracy? As a detective, I knew the value of the truth we had uncovered. But as a human being, I couldn't help but mourn the loss of 2 lives cut tragically short. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Raids were conducted, arrests were made, and the headlines exploded with news of the biggest corruption scandal in our city's history. As I watched the dominoes fall, I felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion. We had done it. We had brought the truth to light. But even as we celebrated our victory, I knew that this was just the beginning. The trial would be long and difficult, with powerful forces arrayed against us. And there were still unanswered questions about what exactly had happened in that motel room on that fateful night. As I sit here now, writing up my final report on the case, I can't shake the feeling that we've only scratched the surface. The deaths of Daniel Roberts and Jessica may have been solved in the eyes of the law, but in my heart, I know there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps some truths are destined to remain in the shadows, known only to those who took them to their graves. But for now, we have brought a measure of justice to our city. We have honored the sacrifice of a man who dared to stand up against corruption, and a young woman caught in the crossfire of forces beyond her control. And in doing so, we have reminded ourselves of the power of truth and the importance of never giving up in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As I close the file on this case, I know that its impact will be felt for years to come. And somewhere out there, I hope that Daniel and Jessica can rest easy, knowing that their deaths were not in vain. The truth has come to light, and with it, the hope for a better, more just future for us all. As I sit here in my office, the weight of the past few months bearing down on me, I can't help but reflect on the tumultuous journey that has been the Daniel Roberts and Jessica case. What started as a seemingly straightforward, albeit tragic, double homicide has unraveled into a complex web of corruption, deceit, and justice long overdue. The confirmation from our department that Daniel and Jessica were indeed victims of a calculated silencing attempt by the criminal network we've been investigating sent shockwaves through our community. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that 2 innocent lives were snuffed out simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The irony of their relationship being incidental, yet ultimately fatal, is not lost on me. Daniel, a man dedicated to upholding the law, and Jessica, a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, brought together in death by circumstances beyond their control. It's a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, and how the ripples of criminal activities can touch even those who seem far removed from that world. The capture of the criminal network's leader was a watershed moment in our investigation. I'll never forget the look in his eyes as we slapped the cuffs on him, a mixture of defiance and resignation. It was as if he knew the house of cards he'd so carefully constructed was finally tumbling down. In the days and weeks that followed, we saw a domino effect of arrests and indictments. Corrupt officials, business leaders, and hardened criminals alike found themselves facing justice. It was a cleansing fire, burning away years of rot and corruption that had infected our city. But amidst the victories and the sense of justice being served, there's a personal tragedy that continues to haunt me. Jessica's mother, Sarah, has become a fixture in our precinct and the courtrooms. I see her almost daily, her eyes hollow with grief but burning with a determination that's both inspiring and heartbreaking. She's made it her life's mission to ensure that her daughter and husband's deaths were not in vain. Sarah has become the face of this case for many in our community, a constant reminder of the human cost of corruption and violence. Her tireless advocacy has been a driving force behind keeping this case in the public eye. There are days when I worry about her, wonder if her quest for justice is helping her heal or simply reopening wounds that may never fully close. But then I see the impact she's having, the way she's channeling her pain into positive change, and I'm in awe of her strength. The ripple effects of this case have reached far beyond our local community. The revelation of how vulnerable our prosecutors can be to threats and intimidation has sparked a nationwide conversation about the safety of those who dedicate their lives to upholding the law. I've sat in on countless meetings and task forces over the past few weeks, all aimed at overhauling our system to better protect those on the front lines of justice. It's bittersweet to see these changes taking place. On one hand, it's a positive step forward, a legacy that Daniel would be proud of. On the other, it's a painful reminder of the cost at which these reforms have come. I can't help but wonder if Daniel knew the risks he was taking, if he ever imagined that his work could lead to such sweeping changes, and at such a personal cost. As the legal proceedings have unfolded, I've watched our community grapple with the revelations that have come to light. The trust in our institutions has been shaken to its core. People look at their neighbors differently now, wondering who might be involved, who might have known something. It's a heavy atmosphere, thick with suspicion and unease. Yet, amidst this darkness, I've also seen glimmers of hope. Community meetings are packed with citizens demanding transparency and accountability. Grassroots organizations have sprung up, dedicated to rooting out corruption and supporting ethical governance. It's as if Daniel and Jessica's deaths have awakened a sleeping giant, a collective consciousness that refuses to return to the status quo. The courtroom scenes during the trials of those involved in the criminal network have been intense, to say the least. I've sat through day after day of testimony, watching as the full scope of the corruption is laid bare for all to see. The evidence we've gathered, the connections we've uncovered, it's all there in black and white, undeniable and damning. Seeing the defendants, once powerful and untouchable, now reduced to nervous wrecks in the dock, brings a sense of satisfaction. But it's tempered by the knowledge that no conviction, no matter how just, can bring back Daniel and Jessica. Their absence is a constant, silent presence in the courtroom, felt by all who know the true cost of this case. As the verdicts have been read out, one by one, I've watched a mix of emotions play across the faces of those in attendance. Relief, vindication, grief, sometimes all at once. For many, including myself, each guilty verdict feels like a small step towards healing, a balm for the collective wound our community has suffered. But even as we close this chapter, I know that the story is far from over. The scars left by this case run deep, and they'll take time to heal. Our community has been forever changed by the events that unfolded here. The mystery and tragedy surrounding Daniel and Jessica's deaths have become part of our local lore, a cautionary tale that will be told for generations to come. In quiet moments, I find myself thinking about Daniel and Jessica, wondering what they would make of all this. Would they feel that their sacrifices were worth it? Would they be proud of the changes their deaths have sparked? These are questions that will never have answers, but they drive me to ensure that the reforms and progress we've made in the wake of this tragedy continue. As I prepare to close the file on this case, I'm struck by a mix of emotions. There's a sense of accomplishment, yes, but also a deep sadness and a lingering unease. We've brought the guilty to justice, exposed a network of corruption that had infested our city for years, and set in motion changes that will protect future generations. But at what cost? The Daniel Roberts and Jessica case will always be more than just another file in our archives. It's a reminder of the price of justice, the fragility of life, and the power of truth to bring about change. As I look out my office window at the city skyline, I can't help but feel that we're standing on the cusp of a new era. An era born from tragedy, but one that holds the promise of a more just and transparent future. The story of Daniel and Jessica, of corruption exposed and justice served, will be told for years to come. But for those of us who lived through it, who pieced together the clues and fought to bring the truth to light, it will always be more than just a story. It's a part of us now, a defining moment that has changed the course of our lives and our community forever. As I finally close the case file, I silently vow to honor the memory of Daniel and Jessica by continuing to fight for justice, to stand up against corruption, and to never forget the lessons this case has taught us all. Their story may have ended, but the impact of their lives and deaths will continue to ripple outward, shaping our world in ways we may never fully comprehend. As I sit here in my office, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating the scattered files and photographs that have consumed my life for the past several months, I can't help but feel a profound sense of both accomplishment and sorrow. The case of Daniel Roberts and his stepdaughter Jessica has finally come to a close, but the weight of their tragic story continues to press upon my shoulders. It's a weight I suspect I'll carry for the rest of my career, perhaps even the rest of my life. The journey to uncover the truth behind their deaths has been nothing short of a descent into the darkest recesses of human nature. What began as a seemingly straightforward, albeit tragic, double homicide in a seedy motel on the outskirts of town has unraveled into a complex tapestry of revenge, conspiracy, and corruption that has shaken our community to its very core. As I reflect on the twists and turns this investigation has taken, I'm struck by the realization that sometimes the pursuit of justice can come at a terrifyingly high cost. Daniel Roberts was a man dedicated to upholding the law, a prosecutor who had built his career on taking down white-collar criminals and corrupt officials. He was the kind of person you'd want on your side, relentless in his pursuit of the truth and unwavering in his commitment to justice. But as we delved deeper into his life and work, we discovered that his crusade against crime had made him powerful enemies who were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their interests. Jessica, on the other hand, was a young woman caught in the crossfire of a war she likely never fully understood. Her relationship with her stepfather had been strained in recent months, a fact that initially led us down false paths of speculation. But as we pieced together the final days of their lives, it became clear that Jessica had stumbled upon something dangerous, something that ultimately sealed both their fates. The revelation that their deaths were the result of a calculated act of vengeance orchestrated by a criminal network Daniel had been investigating sent shockwaves through our department and the community at large. It was a stark reminder that the line between justice and danger is often razor-thin, and those who dedicate their lives to upholding the law sometimes pay the ultimate price for their dedication. As we unraveled the conspiracy, layer by painstaking layer, we uncovered a web of corruption that reached into the highest echelons of our city's power structure. Politicians, judges, business leaders, all implicated in a network of illegal activities that had operated in the shadows for years. Daniel had been on the verge of exposing it all, and for that he and Jessica paid with their lives. The investigation took us to dark places, both literally and figuratively. We found ourselves delving into the seedy underbelly of our city, a world most citizens never see and would be horrified to know exists right under their noses. We interviewed hardened criminals, turned informants, and followed leads that often seemed to lead nowhere. There were moments of frustration, of despair, when it felt like we might never uncover the full truth. But we persevered, driven by a collective determination to bring justice to Daniel and Jessica and to expose the corruption that had festered in our city for far too long. And slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Each new revelation, each piece of evidence uncovered, brought us closer to the truth, but also deeper into a world of danger and deceit. The breakthrough came when we managed to turn one of the lower-level members of the criminal organization. His testimony provided the missing links we needed, connecting the threats against Daniel to some of the most powerful figures in our city. It was a house of cards, and we were poised to bring it all tumbling down. The arrests that followed sent shockwaves through the community. Respected community leaders were led away in handcuffs, their carefully crafted public personas crumbling in the face of overwhelming evidence. The media frenzy was intense, with reporters clamoring for details and the public demanding answers. It was a storm of activity, but amidst it all, I couldn't shake the image of Daniel and Jessica, two lives cut tragically short in the pursuit of truth. As the trials began, the full scope of the conspiracy was laid bare for all to see. The courtroom became a stage where the dark underbelly of our city was exposed, day after grueling day. I sat through countless hours of testimony, watching as the web of lies and deceit was slowly untangled. It was a process both cathartic and deeply disturbing, as we came to understand just how far the corruption had spread and how many lives it had touched. The convictions that followed brought a sense of justice, but it was a bittersweet victory. No amount of jail time for the perpetrators could bring back Daniel and Jessica or erase the pain their deaths had caused. Their absence was a constant, silent presence throughout the proceedings, a reminder of the human cost of this conspiracy. As the dust settles and our community begins the long process of healing and rebuilding trust, I find myself reflecting on the lessons this case has taught us. It's a stark reminder that the fight against crime and corruption is never truly over. For every criminal brought to justice, there are others waiting in the wings, ready to take their place. It's a sobering thought, but one that strengthens my resolve to continue this fight, no matter the cost. The case of Daniel Roberts and Jessica has changed me, both as a detective and as a person. I've seen the depths of human depravity, but I've also witnessed incredible courage and resilience. I've learned that justice is not always clean or simple, that sometimes the path to the truth is fraught with danger and sacrifice. But I've also learned that there are people out there, like Daniel, who are willing to risk everything in pursuit of what's right. As I look out my office window at the city skyline, I can't help but see it differently now. Behind the glittering lights and bustling streets, I know there are shadows, secrets waiting to be uncovered. But I also see hope. Hope in the form of honest citizens who refuse to turn a blind eye to corruption. Hope in the reforms that have been put in place as a result of this case. Hope in the knowledge that there are still people out there willing to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. The story of Daniel Roberts and Jessica will be told for years to come. A cautionary tale about the dangers of speaking truth to power. But it's also a testament to the enduring power of justice and the importance of never giving up in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Their deaths were a tragedy, but the changes their sacrifice has brought about will hopefully ensure that their loss was not in vain. As I finally close the case file, I make a silent vow to honor their memory by continuing the fight against corruption and injustice. The road ahead will not be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever challenges come my way. Because in the end, that's what Daniel and Jessica's story has taught us all, that the pursuit of justice is a never-ending battle, but one that's always worth fighting.